since last Friday.
Perfect, thank you.
Engineering.
All right, thank you. Yep.
So you've been fine.
There's one more. Here.
Joe, you want to move up
Yeah, I'll
to
do that.
chair and table as long as you're the first presenter.
Joe, will there be things we need to sign for you?
I believe just the grant application pending approval. It's it's the third page of it.
All the official documents are in the folder in the agenda. file.
Okay. Grant applications.
I can follow up with you tomorrow too if you have any questions.
Yeah, I have to take one like 30 or so. Yeah, these are all ones.
All right, I'll just give you a call in the morning.
You're gonna get another councilman, we're gonna be sending it around.
There.
Okay.
American.
She was in City Hall today.
Oh.
She was in.
Okay, we got audio.
Question about Cleo. Do you have to change something on your
The
end?
wind blew me away.
New email versus the old email? I'll email you. I can email you. I just didn't know because when I try and put in my current email, it just kind of looks at me like, what? When I go back to the old email, it takes it right away. I mean, it's all forwarding right now, but at some point, I'll.
See that? I got it on Facebook.
I'm sorry. I need to read for help that.
Well, yeah, that's.
It's like grandma check doesn't get it, check or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, I could have ran it through my expensive grammar program, wouldn't have made any difference there to you. Goes back to.
I was thinking of this higher gas. Yeah. Every truck was just cranking. And now our supply chain, if there's certain parts, it's. Yeah. Yep. No, but at home or at night I bring 30 or through 30 home. And then I get up at E66. I was going to 21.
Yeah.
Circle, but
Yeah.
E66 is just as fine.
Yeah.
Till Chelsea goes on.
Yeah, then I'll be really hosed because if 21 down here does, I'm gonna have to go.
Then we're cut off.
Then I'm gonna have to go. I'm just gonna call in. I'll be in when the water's down.
Exactly.
Plus side of that is wells will be
Good.
We appreciate your sacrifice.
Yeah. You have to drive the Cedar Rapids 380 to 80 to get to
I'll call it good at that point. We're done.
It's now 6 p.m. Wednesday, April 6th, 2022, and I'm calling the regular Belle Plaine City Council meeting in session. Should be noted those in attendance are Councilperson Peck, Councilperson Schlusselman, Councilperson Morrow, Councilperson Malcolm, Councilperson Landit, City Administrator Beck, City Attorney Jennifer Zarodnik, Dave Fish, City Clerk Sandra Walton. I'd like to remind all in attendance, including the council and staff, to please shut off your cell phones or put them on the mute mode. With that being said, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, a couple changes to your agenda. Item B under Committee of the Whole has been postponed, so that will not be discussed tonight. Item 15, we are swapping land, not getting swamp land.
Darn.
Yeah, it's the only two changes we have. So other than that, item number 4, approval of the consent agenda, the council minutes of March 16th, 2022, special council minutes of March 23, 2022, receiving and filing the minutes from the March 22nd, 2022 meeting of the Belle Plaine Community Library Board of Trustees meetings, and bills received. Questions, comments? Well, then I'll take a motion.
All motion for approval consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Last chance for discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Resident comments. Now it's time for Belle Plaine residents to make comments concerning issues on tonight's agenda or future agenda items. Please come to the podium, state your name and your address so that it can go in the minutes. Please address all comments to the entire city council. This is not a time to address individuals on the council or a time for debate. Please address the council with respect and courtesy. If you're wishing to talk on chickens tonight, you're going to have to do it now during public comment. The time period that's set aside for discussing chickens, Tracy has the floor during that part of it to present, and then the rest of it is committee discussion by the council. So if you want to get your 2 cents in about chickens, now is the time to do it. Or you can wait till late in the end where there is another resident comment time and get your chicken comments in there. So I just want to bring that up, especially with the room so full of people tonight. The council has a large agenda so they don't have time to debate back and forth. They are not going to vote chickens in tonight. The best they can do is vote. The best they can do is recommend we prepare an ordinance to discuss over a month and a half time period to get chickens in Belle Plaine. So Tracy and I have talked quite a bit on this issue, so I know she's well prepared to represent you on the entire chicken issue and the chicken packet that the council has, which I did get a chicken on it. I got a hen. I didn't get a rooster. So I do know a little bit about chickens, but not much. So if you want to talk, and because it is crowded, I'm not going to make you come up to the podium. You can just stand up, state your name and address for the clerk, and then say what you want to say. So with that being said, go ahead. Does somebody want to stand up and talk first?
Tracy, you got this.
I'll stand up.
Okay.
Melissa Kriegel, 807 7th Street. That's all you need, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I am just.
Social security number,
Right.
credit card number with a little security thing on the back.
This has been something I've been thinking of and excited about for many years, but haven't thought of another way to approach it. So thank you, Tracy, for doing this. I just really think that this would be a really good thing for people that are interested in being responsible and knowledgeable on the issue of having chickens in their yard. So I get nervous, even though I'm a teacher, I get nervous talking in front of adults, but I just think that having your own chickens, what it means to me is it means self-sufficiency, and it means having a healthy source of eggs, which homegrown chicken eggs are so much healthier for you than store-bought chicken eggs. So that's kind of the two biggest things for me is why I would really be interested in having chickens in my backyard. Like I said, being responsible, knowing what you're doing before you get into it, whether it be taking a class on it, because I know that there are lots of classes out there before you're able to have chickens in your backyard. But I just think it's really an exciting thing. So is there anything I should add? I've talked to you many times about it. So I don't know if anybody has anything to add, but.
Holly Carlson, 1405 6th Avenue. I just want to kind of also point out that I have grandchildren who are in 4-H that live in town. Would love to be able to encourage them to have chickens to be able to show at 4-H, which also encourages, being responsible and such also. And have you guys seen the cost of eggs this last week? Would love to be able to have some fresh eggs, and I'm sure that people would probably love to share with their neighbors and such as well. Also, I know that there's concerns about, that people would have like dirty backyards and such, and we already have in place things that need to be taken care of our yards. We can't have clutter, we can't have odors and such. I think that, those things would also be covered under having the chickens as well, in addition to, making sure that we are keeping responsible flocks and such as well. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Ted Bensley, 4005 7th Street, and to add to these two gals' comments, help combat hyperinflation. Easier on your grocery bill.
Looks like 7th Street's leading the charge. For those that don't know, I live on 7th Street. Anyone else?
I'll stand up. I'm Alana Schwem, 1510 3rd Avenue. I wouldn't necessarily have chickens in town, but I'm here to support all of you guys that do. I have a flock of about 45 hens north of town, so I have a lot of eggs every day. I get about 30 some eggs every day, and everybody loves farm fresh eggs. And I think it's just really healthy. It's really great. My kids eat them. I take them to work. People just gobble them up. It's just farm fresh organic eggs at the store the other day were $5.79 a dozen. So feed is not anywhere near that to have your own chickens, get your own eggs. I just think it's really great. And chicken keeping is really easy. It's a lot of cleanup work and it's a lot of feeding, it's dedication. But I just don't really see any reason why we can't have them.
Anyone else? Okay, go ahead.
4th Street, I'll just say I'm supportive. Chickens are good. Good.
Get that.
I didn't catch your address, John.
404 4th Street.
Chickens are good.
Anyone else?
The egress.
I hope you recognize that you just got 6 residents, 7 residents up here. There's not evil people sitting at this table. So say what you want to say. That's why we're here to help make the tough decisions. Go ahead.
Matthew Clark at 709 10th Street. I've been going along with everybody trying to get in, the possibility of having chickens. At the time that we were doing it, I had a child, which would have been nice to give her responsibilities and have her learn that type of stuff. And at the same time, unfresh eggs. Even those get expensive out there. So,
Thank you. Last chance. Okay, this won't make you happy, but agenda item number 6 deals with a public hearing. It deals with the airport. So before we can get to chickens, and we do public hearings always at the beginning. So I'm opening a public hearing on the Belle Plaine Airport pavement rehabilitation project. And Joe, our engineer, it's all in your.
All right, Joe Roenfeld, Bolton and Mink, 1519 Baltimore Avenue, Ames, Iowa. Tonight you have a few agenda items before you for a patching project out at the airport, and that is to replace some deteriorated concrete panels out there that we've done previously. As you guys probably, some of you might remember, we've done a couple of these projects over the years to maintain the airport out there. This is just another phase of that out there. This project will primarily focus, and the recommendation will primarily focus on the runway and keeping the runway safe for people that are using the airport. And if you want, I can go into like some more of the details now and you can keep moving, or we can do it in some of the other phases, whatever you want. I can get into the bids and all that stuff too.
Now this will surprise you because it's a public hearing. I'll allow the public to make comments. So if you'd like to talk about our runway rehabilitation project, I guess the one thing we'll tell you is usually these don't cost us anything. We get what? 80% of the money from the feds?
So 90-10, this is 90% funded from the federal government, 10% comes from a local share somehow.
And usually we're able to get 10% from Mansfield Trust. And if not, many times our airport committee has the money in their own account to pay for it. So it's not like we're out throwing tax dollars at a runway that none of us ever get up and down it. But there is federal money for all airports. So whenever we need repairs, we go after federal money. So if you want to ask questions like what airlines and lands at Belle Plaine Airport, the answer to that still there isn't one. We do spray fields from there, but that's not the city. It's Holsworth, who's who we rent the airport to. And I believe all our hangars are full. Right?
That's correct.
So do you know how long ago the runway was repaired, redone?
Like new, are you saying new concrete, or are you saying like the last patching project that we did?
The last.
The last patching project we did was approximately 3 years ago. And it's shown some signs of aging since then. That's why we're doing this project.
And this is another patching project?
Mhm.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about the bids. They
Sure, sure.
came in higher than you
Sure.
guys were expecting.
Sure. So, I'll get into the bids a little bit here. I'll talk about the grant too, but, the bids, the engineer's estimate was $259,100 for the base bid, which was primarily the work out on the runway. And then there were three alternates, one for 24,000, one for 12,000, and those are some additional patching and like the apron area. And then there was one for 72,000, which was replacement of a taxi lane, which is the pavement that runs parallel to the T hangar that's out there. And that was for 72,000. Bids came in a little higher than the engineer's estimate. I think they were like sevens. Was five. The base bid was 5% above the engineer's estimate. And I didn't summarize the other ones on here. After talking with Bruce, the airport manager out there, and consultation with Steve, for the council's recommendation, we recommended just doing the base bid as part of this project and not the other bids. And so you guys did receive a grant application as part of this package in a later agenda item to incorporate that plus the engineering costs into an overall project cost of $365,000, which 36,500 of it will be paid for by the city or some local entity, and the rest will be paid for by the FAA. I mean, it's still generally within the ballpark of what we thought, but it is a little higher, but not concerning high.
Assuming it's higher because the cost of materials is going up.
The cost of steel is pretty high right now, and so there's quite a bit of steel in there because this is patching. And so we are doing what we can to put steel in there, reinforcing steel in there, a lot more than we would on a brand new one. And the cost of that is portrayed in the cost of the bid.
Thank you.
Other questions, council?
I got a question, sir.
Sure.
This gentleman said the runway had somewhere that the federal government was gonna pick up 90%, we pick up 10%. Could we or could we not take that 10%, whatever the amount is, and put it to our maintenance on our roads that nearly be needed? Couldn't that be, even though it's only 10% that has to come out of our pocket, couldn't we put that,
No,
keep that money in
because the
town?
10% will come from the airport commission or come from the
So it's not
Mansfield
coming from
Trust.
me.
No.
That's why he explained it like he did, that it wasn't coming.
I
from the
just,
city.
he was talking to you guys and I only caught part of it.
Oh, okay.
So no, it wouldn't be an additional 10% that we have sitting somewhere that we.
So
can
not
throw.
really coming from the city of Belle Plaine.
No, because it's in the airport commission fund. It has to be used in the airport.
Thank you.
And they earn primarily their own money from the fuel sales and hangar rent.
So you're saying this is a private business? So why does it concern us?
We own it. It's also where we store Christmas decorations. Don't tell anyone. Federal government doesn't know. That's a, don't tell them. Because I got no place else to hide the Christmas decorations. Anything else out of the council? Joe, what's our next procedure on here for the council to make a motion to decide which bid to accept?
Yeah, I would close the public hearing and then recommend a motion to accept the bid from, I believe it's Iowa Civil Contracting,
Yes, sir.
Iowa. And then when you make that recommendation, make it subject to a grant from the FAA. And then you'll have a final item to approve the grant application, authorize signing it and submitting it. And then it'll be a little while before you'll get the grant, so, as always.
Okay, if there are no more public comments, I'll close the public part of this. Now I'll move to council or to the city council. Are you prepared to make a motion to accept the lower bid here? Sound a lot smarter to the public if you take the low one.
Yes.
I need a motion. And include in that, we want the grant from the FFA.
I make a motion to accept the quote from Iowa Civil Contracting and to include the grant to be filled out for the FFA.
Is there a second to that?
Also,
Ask the FFA.
or maybe the future farmers.
Yeah.
We're gonna get them to do the
Anybody that
work.
wants to
We are gonna save that 10%.
Any further discussion on it? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. So the bid goes to Iowa Civil Contracting, Inc. out of Victory. Now we need, does that allow us to skip to the last one and authorize signing of the grant application and submission to FAA?
Yeah.
Need a motion on that one?
I move to authorize signing of the grant application and submission to the FAA.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that one? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I will sign that tomorrow and get everything to you accordingly, and thank you for coming in here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. I'm gonna sit up there now.
Okay, we're on to committee of the whole work, and the only topic on that's urban chickens presented by Tracy Poppy. So Tracy, if you want to come to the podium, give her your address.
601 11th Street.
And I'm just gonna let you talk to the council.
Okay. Well,
Like I told you before, relax.
okay. All right, so I'm Tracy Popish. Does anyone here not know me? No? Okay, I'll skip that part then. Thank you everyone for coming. Quick show of hands silently. How many are here just for tickets? All right. Might be the biggest crowd I've seen in here in a while. Okay, so myself and my handful of citizens here would like to raise backyard chickens. Recently, there was a post on social media asking if they are allowed in Belle Plaine, and sadly, they are not. They are, however, allowed in a majority of the communities surrounding us. This includes, but is not limited to, Vinton, Marengo, Renewal, Traer, Dizer, Atkins, Cedar Rapids, and Iowa City. In your packet, I have included a fancy map for everyone to see. The purple circles is where backyard chickens are allowed. The dotted circles are where they are allowed by special permission from the city council, generally written permission. The red squares I couldn't get information on, and the two X's out of the whole map do not allow chickens. I did not include Belle Plaine in that because we already know that we don't just yet. Okay, so that is my beautiful visual aid there for you. Why do we want backyard chickens? It's a pretty simple answer. We want the eggs. My family specifically will also probably eventually want the meat, but that's down the road and we're gonna work on figuring out how that works. The eggs of chickens fed with the table scraps and bugs as well as their regular feed are packed with vitamin A. They taste better and they are significantly lower in cholesterol than commercially produced eggs. The lifestyle of a backyard chicken is also a lot higher in quality than a commercially kept chicken. Makes me feel better to know where my food comes from and to know what's going into that food producing machine with the quality of feed that we will be feeding our chickens. It's also better to know it's also good to know the quality of life for the animal that's providing sustenance for my family.
I have taken the time over the last few weeks, months, to write a sample ordinance for the council to look over and consider. I spent a couple of weeks combing through various city ordinances from as strict as Iowa City to as lenient as Traer. Iowa City is very thorough. Traer, you just basically have to ask if you can have them and go about your business. They really don't have too many rules. So this document that I formulated includes stipulations on how many chickens we would like to request, the setback on the property where chicken placement would be allowed, as well as specific coop and cleanliness requirements for each chicken owner to follow. A couple of points of interest on page 2, item 3 under subheading D, terms of the permit. Permits will be granted for 1 year, valid from January 1st through December 31st. Permits may be purchased at any time during the year, but will only be valid through December 31st. Bands showing the permit number will be issued with each permit, and the permittee shall place and keep leg bands on all of said permitted chickens. Currently, right above that, I have listed the cost of shall be set by you guys as $50. I just threw that number out there. It goes anywhere from $25 to like $150 for this permit, depending on which city you look at. If you guys want, I have printed copies of every city that I mentioned of their ordinance. I can turn those in too for further deliberation for you guys to look over.
Just out of curiosity, who asked the $150?
I think it's Iowa City, so it's the total cost includes the $100 permit plus the class, and I believe the class is about $50.
Okay.
So yeah, even the $100 price I thought was a little extreme, but that weeds out people that aren't taking it seriously too. So at the end of the day. Next page, site requirements. The property must be a single family residence. Coops cannot be within 15 feet of the neighboring habitation. They also cannot be located within 5 feet of the dwelling on the applicant's property, nor can they be located within 5 feet of the property line. This is pretty standard across most of the ordinances that I've looked at. And then also coops and pens shall be located in the rear yard or the backyard. The next item F, no more than 6 hens allowed. Roosters are prohibited for the obvious reasons at 5 o'clock in the morning. All chickens covered by permit shall be banded. I kind of mentioned that earlier. Chickens shall be housed in the coop from dusk until dawn. This is more for their own protection to be inside the coop. But every single ordinance says that, so I put that in there. Adequate food, water, and shelter shall be provided at all times. All feed and other items associated with the keeping of chickens shall be protected in a manner to prevent rodents from gaining access to or coming into contact with them. This is important, not only for your own feed supply, but also for just preventing them from infesting places they don't need to be. A chicken that is outside the pen is considered at large and in violation of the city code. And then the last one, the city shall not be liable for injury or death of chickens caused by dogs, cats, other animals, etc. And then I put some coop requirements in there. You guys have probably already read over that. The biggest one is a minimum of 4 square feet of space shall be provided per bird inside the coop and run. That way they have enough room to move around in a comfortable position. And last but not least, on the next page under permit revocation, item 2, in the event that the applicant or committee does not fully and strictly comply with the requirements of this section, the application may be denied or the permit may be revoked. There's stuff about in writing. You go down to bullet point C there. If the issue is not resolved, let me back up a little bit. The first step is a notice of violation. The second step and the third step is a $35 fee if you've not cured the issue that was brought about by the initial inspection. I put that in there as a deterrent. I think it's a good idea to have some sort of backup plan for people who may not take this as seriously as the rest of us here. I hope that everybody would be on their best behavior, but in the event that they don't, then I put that clause in there for you guys. Let's see here. Some city ordinance do require a class before permit approval. This is not something that I've included in this ordinance, but I am 100% open to adding it to that. Obviously, that's up to you guys. And I'll leave that to your discretion. I do think it's a good idea. Let's see, so I'm done with that part. Recently, I did take the time to meet with the chief of police and some of his officers. They seem to be on board for keeping the chicken piece. They didn't see that it would be a real issue, especially with the coops and the pens being completely enclosed, free range chickens, none of that stuff. I did interview the chief of police in Marengo via email, and he had stated that their ordinance has been in effect for quite a while. They do not typically have issues with chickens at large, nor do they have too many issues with people violating their code. He said they did have one violation last year, and it's because the person had too many chickens. Simple. It wasn't a dirt or uncleanly issue. Let's see. I did speak with the mayor recently, and he tossed around the idea of an inspector for coops prior to permit approval. I think this is a great idea. I did offer my own services to form a chicken coalition to help assist those who need it and to also assure that things are being done properly. That's also up to you guys how you want to address that. But I am volunteering for the position if you do want me to gather a couple people and make that happen. The true meaning of community is helping those around you, and for this project to be successful, we will for sure need to lean on each other. We will be our own little chicken raising community, and we already have a Facebook page, so that's a good start. It's called Meet the Flockers.
That's nice.
Let's see. I think that's it for my little speech I wrote there. So, in your packets, you have a couple of examples of chicken coops. This is what I have in mind for what would be acceptable under the ordinance for chickens. I have two different price points. One is $4.49 and one is $5.49. There's a guide being passed around. You guys can look at those. The main difference is the size of the coop itself is bigger for the more money that you spend. They both are acceptable for 6 chickens, which is what we're asking for. They do make cheaper ones. However, I encourage people to maybe spend a little bit more if you're going to have these guys for a long time. And some people did require a heat lamp. I think that's common sense, but I don't know if you would want that in the ordinance also because winters do get rough around here. That was another thing that I thought of with these coops. I don't think they come insulated.
That's probably part of the class, isn't it?
It would be, yeah. Yeah, keep your chickens warm. Don't let them freeze. They will freeze.
For dogs too, but people don't do it for dogs.
Well, and then last on my agenda is a picture. This is just the parameters of what I have in the example of an ordinance as to where we specifically in our yard could keep chickens. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 options there. So kind of an idea for you guys to look at to see how I specifically plan to house my chickens, and the distances and all that now. So the one other thing in your packet was an application example. I don't really have a lot on that. There's several different examples, and each one tends to go along with the specific ordinance that they that's set forth by the city. Usually there's things to check off. On here, you initial if you understand the requirements. Iowa City is a little bit different. They require written permission from their neighbors. I don't think that's necessary in our situation. I think maybe talking to your neighbors would be a good idea. And then just all the rest of the stuff on here, basically the bullet points of the ordinance would be listed. In my mind, would be listed on the permit to be signed off on by the applicant. Does anyone have questions?
So you put the initial maximum as 6, is that right?
Yes.
6 hens?
Yes.
Okay.
You can have one if you'd like.
I just,
You can keep that house.
that wouldn't go well.
So I have a question about the pen. I understand about the coops. You define a pen as an enclosure for chickens which allows freedom of movement, but also prevents escape. Are you advocating any particular size for this? Because you did say they would not be free range. You just could not let them run in your backyard wherever they want to go, correct?
Correct. Yep, so the, I would abide by the 4 square feet. I think it should be important inside and outside. I believe when they say that, they mean the entire coop and run is 4 square feet per chicken. I think we should probably give them more than that. A lot of ordinances have a maximum of 12 so that people aren't making their entire backyard a chicken coop. So that's something to consider. When it comes to preventing escape or preventing breach of the coop and slaughter of the chickens by an animal, a lot of people do like mesh in the ground so they can't dig up under, and then they attach it to the body runners of the coop. Some of the coops themselves are off the ground instead of setting on the ground, so that makes it a little easier, a little harder for something to get in or get out, especially if they're shut up at night. Did that answer the question? Okay.
So on your diagram, the options 1 through 4 are just different places that you would place the coop. Is there?
Ideally, yes.
Yeah, is there anything you want to explain about? Just that there are 4 different places that would work.
Yeah, just 4 different places that we found in our yard that would work. We haven't decided exactly where it's gonna be, but yeah, anything that falls in the 15 feet from here, 15 feet from here, and then 5 feet from our house, that's the closest one right there. You have to use your imagination that that's 5 feet. I did not draw it to scale, I just kind of sketched it out. We do have a greenhouse nice and close, and then over here by the garage, we have a compost area. I did talk to my husband, I think we would move that because we would be composting our chicken waste. So move that farther away from the neighbor's house. That way we kind of stay within the parameters of what's set for the chickens in there.
And the fence that you've drawn in there, is that the fence that's already there?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Have you talked to your neighbors, all of them?
Not yet.
Okay. Just wondered.
I know that our neighbor to the south would be on board. The neighbor to our east, I would have to speak with both the tenant and the owner. It would make me more comfortable than just one or the other, you know what I mean? So, because the tenant has to live there and the owner has to bring someone new in eventually, so.
And I think some of the ordinances or the applications, don't they require that the landowner be on board anyway?
Yes, some of them that I had provided, yeah. Make sure, like some require written consent. Some require that you have checked with your neighbors, that kind of thing, just to not have complication among neighbors or any more than we already have, so.
Other questions?
You've done your homework and that helps a lot,
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Very good presentation.
Yep.
Thank you.
I talked to a couple of friends of mine that don't live in Iowa, but live in a suburban area, and they allow hens. And they said that the neighbors all came around and asked them if it was okay. They keep it very well clean. Says occasionally you hear a little clucking noise, but two of the people I talked to said they don't have an issue with smell. And the people that are doing it are keep it clean and it's well organized. And he said there hasn't been a pest problem. They keep the food up and in containers, and so if it's done right, it's not an issue. And I like the idea that you thought, whether it's sanctioned by the city or not, you do it yourself. If you goes around and just kind of works with everybody, and just kind of make sure that you eyeball and see issues and resolve it. You just stay ahead of the problem.
Yeah, the idea is to be proactive,
Yeah.
not reactive.
Plus, you're educating everybody and giving everybody an idea on what works and what doesn't. You know, it's dealing with live things that always cause headaches and plus, I don't know, you know, somebody's going to try to smoke everything that grows.
Well, they do taste delicious.
Bird flu and other diseases that chickens can create. I mean, I think we would be irresponsible if we did not consider that as part of the big picture of this.
Okay, I've got that. So avian flu in the big picture is like any other flu. It has a season. I know that it's in the news now because it's happening now. My best guesstimate, and this may not come to fruition, but by the time we're done, by the time you guys are done, polishing and hacking apart and putting back together the ordinance and approving it, that would be over. The flu virus itself can only live at certain temperatures. It likes the in-between. It doesn't like too hot, doesn't like too cold. So that's why we're seeing that more now. Also, the migratory birds are going over and spreading it. That's another big issue. I do have some information on past infections. In 2014 to 2015, 21 states had bird flu outbreaks. In 2016, Indiana had a bird flu outbreak. In 2017, Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, Georgia had a bird flu outbreak. There was another one in 2020, and then in 2022, we currently have one that started with the knowledge of a wild duck in South Carolina. It happens quite often. Prevention is the key on that. Prevention is the key on any disease. Cleanliness, cleaning up after your chickens,
I've
making
never
sure that you
heard where
don't
a
touch your
city
eyeballs.
has had to tell everybody in town to kill their 6 hens because there's been bird flu in a huge factory, 50,000 or 250,000 bird production.
Right.
I think in my opinion, I think there's a big difference between the two.
Absolutely.
There are some other diseases that chickens carry, or not necessarily carry, but can transmit to humans. There's salmonella, campylobacteriosis, we've got that one, chlamydophiliosis, and avian influenza. I do know about histoplasmosis. I have looked into it. Unfortunately, we live in what's called the Mississippi River Valley. It is endemic to our area. I looked up some statistics on it. 90% of humans in our area have been either infected with it or exposed to it. It's not something that we can readily avoid. With the first ones I mentioned, good hand washing and good hygiene is how you prevent those. You don't touch your eyeballs. You don't kiss your chickens. As cute and fluffy as they are. Some people suggest wearing special shoes and special clothes and special gloves when you tend to your chickens, especially when you clean out the coop, and then you don't drag those back in the house. Just a few to kind of get there.
You mentioned histoplasmosis, and I know the council has heard this story too, but I want everybody out here to also hear it. I have personal experience with that disease. One of my daughters got histoplasmosis. It went into her eyes, and she started to lose her vision. And the treatment ended up being chemo drugs injected directly into her eyeball. And luckily, she's gone into remission, but it could kick up again at any point in her life, and she could lose her vision. So, and that is caused primarily, that's a fungus that is in the environment. And Tracy is correct. We live in what is known as the histobelt. And it would not just be from chickens, but it's found predominantly or particularly in the droppings of bats and birds. And it gets into the soil gets riled up, it gets into the spores, get into the air, and then we can breathe it. And most people kick it off just like a normal flu. We do have one resident in our town who did lose a whole lung, because he did encounter that. So I just wanted to share that. It's probably not very likely, but it is a possibility. So we need to be aware they're not clean animals.
Right.
And I think we have to look at the statistics. Most of the mayors I've talked to, Cedar Rapids spent a lot of time in research, and out of a community of 145,000 people, they've got less than 50 permits. Williamsburg spent time on this. They had 0 permits. So the thought of there being a chicken coop in every backyard in Belle Plaine, it's probably not going to happen. If every one of them
Sounds like
here,
an old political slogan.
if everyone here builds a chicken coop and we spread it out, it looks like 7th Street will be the epicenter of chicken.
They'll be bringing eggs over.
It'd be cheap eggs.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying, but I'm not concerned that there's going to be 1,800 chicken coops in Belle Plaine.
I think Marengo has 4 permits active right now. So, not very many.
I agree with you. I think the class is important, and I did spend some time this afternoon. Iowa State has classes in it. Iowa State has online classes. I found you a Canadian class for $125.
Road trip.
Thought that was cool. It's online for $125. I thought it was a little pricey. And the Indian Creek Nature Center, who does most of the educating for Marion, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and surrounding towns, is where most people go for their education. I would think that would be important for us to keep in the code if you so desire to put this into effect.
You can go out to Alana's place and then learn how to corral them.
And I tell you, I've learned a lot just by learning myself. A class would have been very helpful. I mean, to learn how to care for your birds if they do get sick, because they do get respiratory infections, how to care for them, how to notice it before you lose your birds. And all that information would be very helpful.
I know you said no residents comment, and this is a positive for the class. But I worked at a food factory a few years ago, and they were having issues with salmonella coming into the plant, which is a problem. Found out it was coming from the source of a man who farmed, had chickens, but he wasn't doing the changing of the shoes. He was wearing them into the plant and tracking it all over. That's what it ended up being. That's my only concern with it, is that the education is out there for everyone doing it.
And I think that's what, I can't speak yet for the council. I have to let them make their decision. So, council, it's in your hands. Do you want us to explore writing the code and bringing it back to you?
Mayor, I got a couple comments first.
Well, no, I
No,
think we
no,
need to
I
keep
can't
this among
unless,
us.
because I'll have 30 in here and I let one go, but I couldn't get to my gavel fast enough.
I think, in my opinion, I think we should move forward and look at an ordinance that
You've done and make some changes.
Sandy and I to do that. He's busy right now. I'm not gonna make him work on an ordinance. If he doesn't work with the DNR every day, I don't let him get off work at 5 o'clock. I'm gonna stay. Okay, you and I can work on it between the one she created. I think we look at Atkins because they have some definite things. We got Cedar Rapids in there. I have a whole file of chickens, folks. Whoever put on Facebook, we've never talked about chickens, is wrong. I've got loads of chickens.
Do you want these copies? These are alphabetical, all the cities that are around us.
I think that's yes.
Yep.
Just in case.
So based on what you guys nodded, we are gonna work on an ordinance. Hopefully we can get it prepped for your review by the next meeting. Now, a little education to the public. If we do, but let's assume we don't, all heck can break loose in City Hall and we just don't get it done for the next meeting. So let's just say it's the first meeting in May. Ordinances have to pass 3 consecutive readings. And because it would be one that I want the entire public to have notice that we are changing, I will make it at 3 separate meetings. I won't short it by not doing the third one. And then it has to be published, and then we have to send it to our ordinance company, right? And they have to put it in the book, and then once it's published.
Once it's published.
Okay, so there are some things we're gonna have to research, starting with getting tags. We're gonna have to, probably Steve and Sandy and I will discuss on how we're actually gonna think about the inspections. I still lean towards getting Mike Tomish to inspect the new coops. And then after that, maybe letting your committee help us enforce laws or send you guys out to say, do you realize that chicken B here is not being raised properly? Or we'll get it worked out. I think it's, we can get it done and make it work in Belle Plaine. I think there'll be a number of people happy. I just want you to be prepared. If a month and a half from now at the last meeting, I got a room more packed than this with the anti-chicken crowd, which I don't know who they are, but if it is, then your council may be sitting here going, well, maybe we better put this on delay for a while. But put the word out that the council is working on a chicken ordinance, and in the next, Sandy and I talked this afternoon. We thought if everything went together properly, we could get this into law by July 1. City governments are faster than federal government, but we're still slower than a neighborhood meeting. I do appreciate you being here. Appreciate what you did.
Thank you for having me.
And your city government works for you, folks. Just show up and ask them. Are we working on water? You damn right we're working on water every day. Just ask that guy. And in fact, as long as I brought that topic up myself, when somebody said we should have had a plan, he and I were talking today. We started trying to drill a well over 6 years ago. And we're still trying to get federal money and get a water plan done so we can get to that point. It's not that we didn't have a plan to deal with the drought, but the federal government hasn't been real kind to us. 6 or 7 years ago, we applied for a grant to drill a well and got rejected. Got told, write a water plan and you'll get it right away. Trouble is, the engineering firm we hired doesn't have the water plan done yet. And in the meantime, the DNR says, well, you got to do this, 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 and this. So we'll get another new well up, and I hope to have that up by the end of the summer. By the way, keep praying for rain. Well 6 is maybe a thing of the past when we can shut it off, hopefully in another month. But I thank you very much for being a concerned citizen coming in.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Tracy.
Nice job.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yes, you're welcome.
Now, nobody's going to make you sit here. We don't get upset if you get up and leave, but it's not like you're stuck in your chairs.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Good to see ya. Are you open yet?
Not yet.
What's, all
We'll talk to the boss.
right.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. See you guys.
Let's stay, but I have to go cook something.
I don't blame you.
Are you making chicken?
They're having chicken tonight. All right, let's go to the Kirkwood letter. I'm just going to turn this one over to Steve because he's actually talked to them a little bit more, but I wondered if there wasn't going to come a point in time where the Kirkwood Center was going to become obsolete. Thank you. Changed education people. So, Steve, go ahead and give them your 10 cents worth, and then we'll talk about whether we want to explore this further or exactly what we want to do.
I don't know how far back you want me to get into it, but basically, I was put in contact with Kirkwood by Mitch because they had approached him about it, and he thought that it would be appropriate for the city to look into this and investigate it. So then I have had several conversations with Dr. Sundberg, Lori Sundberg, who's the president of Kirkwood, and as well as her vice president of facilities, Troy. And I've walked through it. It looks like it's overall pretty good shape. I noticed a couple of things that I thought needed attention, and I asked them if they would consider providing an endowment for the building, because those were things that they were going to have to do anyway. And we negotiated a price of about $50,000. And I think we could do some cool stuff with this thing. I understand, you know, that another facility would have operating expenses and things like that. I think that we would be a good in-between owner if we decided we did not want to own the building. But there have been a few ideas kicked around about what we could do with it. The school rents part of it. I told Dr. Sundberg that we would be interested in leasing it back to Kirkwood so that they could be there as long as they'd like. And she said that she liked that idea. I wasn't sure if the council was interested in hearing any of the ideas that I had that could potentially go in there.
I would be.
Well, it's set up like classrooms, and it has clearly defined areas and learning spaces. So I thought it could be potentially a very successful place for a daycare. I think it could be a place where people could just rent an office space if they wanted to, because, you know, there are, I don't have the plan in front of me, but there's one big classroom upstairs, and then a main lobby area. And then there are 2 classrooms in the lower level. There's a restroom on each floor. And then the building next to it, which used to be the Cole Morgan Schlew Law Office, was annexed into the Kirkwood building, and there are classrooms in there.
And what's nice about that is that's ground entry level.
Yes.
For whatever use.
And they do have ramps to every level for ADA compliance. I went in the basement of the former law office, and it looked like it was in really good shape. Troy does a great job of keeping up the buildings. But like I said, there were a few things that we picked out that it needed.
Yeah, the museum board looked at this, and I think we just kind of determined that we have enough on our hands with our building to try to take on another facility like that. And then trying to do something with it, because we're a volunteer group, it didn't make sense for us to try to do that. So that's when I talked to Dr. Sundberg, I kind of said, I think we need to have maybe talk to the city, because it would be a good facility to have, and whatever happens down the road. But there are options, like you said, to lease that out to whether or not it's the school or it's continue to Kirkwood, or if there's a third party unknown that would want to go in there.
Yeah, it's the old Hart Memorial Library, and I grew up in that place. It's a very solid building inside and out, and
it's very historic too.
The Carnegie Library.
No, it's no. The guy that it's one of the original founding families, the White family, and one of the guys that actually left, who's related to the Hart family, he actually left but became very wealthy. And Mrs. Wertheim, Solly Wertheim's wife,
stayed in touch with him always. And so what he said is, what can I do for Belle Plaine? And she said, we need a library. So he gave $10,000. And so that building was built in 1930. But the family history goes all the way back to the beginning.
Fascinating.
Of Belle Plaine. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut that off. It's not a problem. But yes, no. Yeah, it was a private donation. That's why it's Hart Memorial. You learn really wonderful things when you're in the museum.
And I think we probably need a motion for Steve and our legal staff to work on a deal with Kirkwood accepting that from Kirkwood Community College.
Steve, you said, you negotiated $50,000 as an endowment. Is that, I know the information we had here that pertained to repairs on the roof, that amount is the same as was mentioned. Is that something in addition to the?
That would be that's kind of what we ended up at. They obviously wanted to not give much, but I thought 50,000 was an appropriate amount for us to get off on the right foot with it.
Does that include the current repairs on it, or
Yeah,
we make the repairs?
That would be us responsible for the repairs, but I don't know that they're going to equal $50,000.
But we don't have any idea what permanent upkeep would be as the years go on. Heating, cooling.
We've got, did I give that to you?
She gave me a breakdown on like what the utility bills are and things like that. So it would obviously have to earn its keep, or we would have to make another decision on it.
Well, how about a motion giving Steve and Jennifer the job of negotiating the settlement with Kirkwood, and we will accept the building. Okay, this is your chance to give me a motion.
I'll do it. I mean, I make a motion to have Steve and our legal department to look into the negotiated purchase of the Kirkwood property.
Is there a second to that motion?
A second.
That being said, any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, let's go to some stuff that I'll go quick.
Yeah, one more.
Yeah, I'm gonna get through the next one. Discuss and review and action the latest inspection reports for the properties at 1306 6th Avenue, 1411 10th Avenue. We called Mike at late afternoon and said, there's no need to come because did you guys get that or did I hand that out to you? The latest email from
Yeah.
Enos that he's now selling both of these properties.
All of them, I believe.
That was in here, wasn't it?
I don't know whether it just came out. I think I set it down in front of each of your places.
Yeah. Well, the one that was in the packet said something about, the last guy quit, you have the,
Yeah, I put all those,
That's
but
what I
no,
have.
the latest one came in this afternoon that,
in front of you.
yeah.
It's a single page in front of
This
you.
is from Curtis Brown, right?
I got one of those.
That's the one I have.
I don't have anything
Oh,
from
wait,
Enos.
no, I don't.
Yeah, I don't either.
We had been emailing back and forth and I was trying to get some
So you
movement.
have one from Enos?
No, I haven't. It's Curtis. It just said, I wanted to update you on the status and I just thought it was in the same
Oh,
style
okay.
as. Yeah, no, it's Curtis as well.
He disclosed that there were some personal issues and funding issues, and he was just wants to divest completely out of all of his properties in Bellplain.
So he's selling them or has them sold?
He is going to sell them.
Going to sell them. Here's the latest email. Take a quick look at it.
He's got three.
Two.
He has,
He has three, only two that are.
Only two that are under
That's probably-
city.
That's probably these two.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
6 to
Casey's and
10.
Park. Okay.
Yeah, over by New
Squire's
Casey's.
old house.
Yeah.
The two that have your most recent inspection. So that's why I decided there was no reason to bring Mike in here tonight, because you have to decide. Being the one on 6th Avenue, folks, after the totally failed inspection, we have, now, if he's selling that or renting that, we don't have any code to deal with that.
Right.
The other one is not done in his failing inspection, so, we want to wait and see what happens with him selling them and drop these inspections on the new owner,
What happens if we proceed?
or
Because I mean, we're just gonna deal with this with a new seller or a new buyer, and
So
we'll be
the last
another
one of
3
these
years
that
into
we
this.
had that, you know, we got an inkling they were gonna sell, we reported the dangerous building so that anybody that was gonna buy it that had the abstract continued would be on, you know, notice that this was a dangerous building.
Mhm.
And that, you know, these inspections were underway and they were gonna do
Excuse
something
me.
with the building's gonna, yeah.
That would get disclosed to someone who's trying to buy the building.
If they have the abstract continued.
Okay.
Because the one property that we recorded this on, they just did a quick claim deed, they didn't have the abstract continued. But it's a public record and you have a right to see it, you can search Iowa land records and obtain that information. A prudent seller or a prudent buyer, somebody that's, you know, gonna put some money into this property is gonna have the abstract continued, and it would show up, it shows that these properties are subject to, you know, these notices. If we move forward and you say, you know, you're not making progress, you know, we will enter it in list pendants, and it will be a court filing, and they'll be subject to following through if it changes ownership.
I think we should do that.
I agree. I agree, this is just
but
gonna
can
keep
you
going
do,
back
can
and
you
forth.
do that on both properties? I don't think you can do it on 6th Avenue. Yeah, you can do it on the 10th.
Because he's done nothing.
But 10th, he's done nothing.
Yeah.
Mackenzie's got the sticks picked up
Well,
in the car.
I mean, I wish that that the other address at 2nd Avenue was here just to see that this guy's put in work and he's still failing. And it's just too costly. And I think that's why we need to move forward on both of them if we can. File the paperwork and let the new buyer or him deal with the one to come down.
Tell us if we do resolutions on both properties. And after reading Mike's report on the 6th Avenue property, anybody that buys that better have more than handyman status and trying to make it a viable place to live.
Plumbing, electrical. There's a lot of that that isn't enforceable though. Isn't that the case?
So Jennifer, if these do get sold and there's a new owner, do we have to start the whole process all over again?
No,
Is it by
that's
the,
why, number one, I would recommend that we do, you know, that you guys make a motion that I file the dangerous building
Yes.
notice like we did the other one. And get that on file tomorrow. And then from there, we can work on the resolution for the next council meeting that you guys can pass forward with this. I was just looking at the report on the 6th Avenue property. You know, we've still got some wood issues, we've still got some floor joist issues, those types of things. So that one, I think we're still fine, we're gonna hold it on. The other one is 14.
1411 10th Avenue.
He's done, yeah, there's been no
Nothing.
effort there.
Right, I
Well,
think,
Mike's whole report says the foundation is a total disaster.
but But I think there's enough things that are still wrong with it, which is why deciding for the waste and molding stuff that you could move forward with that one, because those have not been completely abated.
The 6th Avenue.
The 6th Avenue.
Sixth Avenue, yeah. 10th Avenue, I know it's. So what do I need him to pass a motion on tonight?
I would say,
Does the city ever put liens on that, or is that a nightmare too?
you can't put a lien on it without a forward, which is what we are pursuing.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
So the best we can do is, at the moment is, the stopgap is to do basically I need a motion that directs me to file the dangerous building notice with the Benton County recorder. Putting any potential buyers on notice that this property is having issues and it needs to be resolved. Both properties.
I make a motion for 1306 6th Avenue and 1411 10th Avenue for our legal team to file the dangerous report to the county and continue, as she said.
And then do the resolution.
Gotcha.
It shouldn't be hard to get a second. Is there a
I
second?
will second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Good. Those weren't as hard to deal with as I thought. We'll let Mike know that tomorrow too. Okay, if you go to your next one, are water department charge changes. Your second page is what they currently are. The first page, and Sandy, I'll let you talk to that item.
So, these are like additional charges for services. It's not for water itself. If they're doing a tap, they have meters freeze because of neglect. They want to test their meters because they feel they're not accurate. Meter repairs for other reasons. Calls to our guys for service. They want their water turned on, turned off. Emergency type situations. Nick and I went through the list, the existing list, some of which wasn't being consistently administered. And we talked about why that might be, how we could administer them consistently, what the rate should be, whether they're sufficient or not, because obviously the price of everything everywhere has gone up. So the clean typewritten one is what Nick and I are proposing. The scribbled up one is what we had in place prior to that. Obviously, we had to update some of the codes because we've updated our ordinance book since this original one was made.
Questions?
Also, I guess I should say, any of the changes that we did make, I went through and looked at the existing ordinance book to make sure that we are not in conflict with any of the ordinances the way they're written. So if the meter deposit on the ordinance says 150, this says 150. If the ordinance says subject to a list approved by council, then we set a new number, which is an income from the ordinance, because the ordinance doesn't have a number. It just says you guys can pick a number and then we have to post it in our office. So if you do approve the changes on the clean sheet, no ordinances have to be rewritten to accomplish that.
And in most cases, these are items that most citizens deal with.
One of the ones that Nick and I had talked about was water shut on and off in a non-emergency situation. We talked about there should be a fee, and then, well, should it be part of our service to the community? So that's where Nick and I kind of came up with, if they're responsible people taking care of their stuff, they should be able to give 24 hours notice that they need something done. Oh, I have a plumber coming next Thursday. and we make arrangements to come and turn it off when my plumber's here. Sure, not something we would necessarily have to charge for. Someone who picks up and says, my plumber's here and, he decided if you could come turn the water off, he could maybe do something else. Okay, you didn't really plan ahead, so we're dropping everything to be able to go and do that and potentially have to reschedule something else we were working on. That should probably have a fee associated to it. So that's kind of why that 24-hour notice thing came into place.
Questions? Comments?
What is the 35 highlighted in yellow saying we just? Anything special about that?
No, I started to highlight ones that weren't any different than what was in the ordinance book, and then I decided I really needed to make sure none of them were, so. And it's the only copy I have of this.
Any other questions? While the discussion is relevant, then how about a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the new water department charges.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Are we allowed to comment?
No. You can comment a resident comment. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Number 11, discuss for possible approval, resolution 220401, a resolution on setting a public hearing on delinquent animal licenses. This is that time of year, and the first question you're gonna ask, is that list longer or shorter than normal? And I'm guessing longer, but I'm not 100% positive. Longer than normal. You're just setting the public hearing.
Looks like normal.
Yeah, I think last year it was this way, so probably just seems longer.
When did all of these people last get a notice? Okay, the delinquent.
I believe we sent them in February and March, so I'm gonna say March.
These are our current residents
We've
still
been
living here.
If they're not, they have not told us that they are not.
These people.
A lot of times they're the same people as the year before and the year before too.
Any other questions?
This might be way off, but is there a way that, that licenses can be built into, like the water bill?
No, but all they have to do is call us and ask us, and we can put the charge on the water bill. But we can't automatically assume that the animal still exists or that the owners still have the animal.
Or that they're vaccinated properly.
So the owner has to take some step. We make it as easy as possible. We can put it on their water bill, they can put it on a credit card, they can come in and pay it. I mean, they can drop the payment, we'll mail the tag to them. I mean, I don't know of anything we can do to make this any easier on someone.
And they receive multiple notices.
Oh, yeah.
Multiple.
I think you guys start putting it on the water bill in like December, that it's
In
Yeah.
November.
Well, it's all over
Water
Facebook.
bill,
Yeah.
And
Is there-
and she sends it out on, I don't call it Nixle anymore, but the Texmo.
Now, is there a delinquent fee
It's
Oh,
$5
yeah,
for every
This
month.
is-
for every month? Okay.
This is what they always have met, correct?
That was probably March's.
So there would be,
Yeah, it's probably 5 more on top of that.
So, because get mine, So I didn't know there was a delinquent for me.
Cause you're a good boy.
Yeah. It's a long story about a citizen we had a warrant on to arrest him because not only didn't they pay this, they skipped the court date to go. And they were lucky that we had a female officer, so they didn't get arrested. They get told.
Yeah. So what will happen is they will get another letter, once you guys set this date, that we will send out telling them that they have the opportunity to come to this public hearing and explain why they haven't licensed like that. Or obviously they can call in and take care of it, or come in and take care of it before this.
Or call and tell us that,
They don't have to pay.
yeah, pets.
Right.
And then after that, after the public hearing, when we have the list that says we still haven't done it yet, then the chief is supposed to go around and verify that the dog is still there, or the pet is still there, and issue a citation. And usually he does one more step in between there, where he gets him another opportunity of 10 days to get it done.
Need a motion on this one.
I make a motion to approve resolution 220401 on setting a public hearing on delinquent animal licenses.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Discuss for possible approval resolution 220402, a resolution approving transfer of funds. I'll turn that to the clerk again.
Everything on this list was approved in the existing budget. With the exception of moving some monies from windstorm to back to the capital fund and from loss to the capital fund. Auditors require, state now requires that all transfers be done by resolution, even if you approved it in the budget itself. That's why they're all on there. And I'm just trying to get them cleaned up before the end of the fiscal.
Questions? Motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 220402, approving the transfer of funds.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Discuss for possible approval resolution 220403, a resolution to not transfer funds. This one you're gonna have to explain.
Okay, so when you did originally budget for fiscal 22, we had intended on taking money from the water fund to pay for the water GO bond, which is normal for us, what we have done historically. We all know that our water fund is not healthy. Our debt service fund is plenty healthy right now. Not that we may not have to remedy the situation, but we're kind of kicking the can down the road, so to speak. Where we could help the water fund this year is not make that $47,000 transfer from water, which would show like a water expense, into debt service. Since you guys had instructed us to do that during the budget, I needed to make sure that you're all on board with not making that transfer this fiscal year.
Questions?
Makes sense.
Need a motion?
I move to approve resolution 220403, a resolution to not transfer funds.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Last chance for statement. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Discuss for possible approval, resolution 220404, a resolution approving the designation of SLFRF funds for the city of Belle Plaine. And again, I will turn to the clerk for an explanation of this.
So we have to do reporting. This is for that big COVID chunk of money that we have half that we've already received, the other half that will be coming. For our particular town, it's gonna total in the neighborhood of $364,000. We have to do reporting on that. Based on that reporting, there are several options on how you can report. We can say, I'm doing this particular water project, I'm doing this particular infrastructure project, I'm using it in this manner. And we can report all those details if that's how we choose to do it. Lots of paperwork, lots of work time. What the state is actually recommending for anybody who is getting less than $10 million, they're recommending you do kind of like you do on your taxes, where you do, I'm doing a standard deduction. They're allowing us to do that, where you can just say, I'm taking the standard deduction for 364,000, whatever that magical number is. And the reporting then from our end, it's very simple. I still have to report what we spend. I still get to tell them what we did with it. But instead of every invoice, every detail, all the line items, I basically get to say, yeah, we used it for such project. There's how much we spent.
Not itemized.
Way easier. Yeah, it's like not itemizing your taxes. Just boom. It is their recommendation to do that. So it's not like, oh, I found a loophole. Let's do this really simple. That's what they're recommending. All of the small towns, even some of the towns that are twice our size, are choosing to do that. Just because, hey, they're going to let us do it. We're going to jump on that. I just need your permission to be able to go that route.
Questions? Motion.
I motion for approval of resolution 220404.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Last chance for comments. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Discuss for possible approval of resolution 220405, a resolution regarding the city of Belle Plaine Community School District land swap. Swap. You've already approved this, we've signed contracts, but now to finalize it, we need a resolution.
I motion for approval of resolution 220405.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Who got it?
Made by me.
Garrett and Judy.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Discuss for possible action, one-time utility credit on the property at 1306 8th Avenue, Belle Plaine, for a water softener that continued to recycle and was not caught for several days. This is what you've commonly done, the one-time credit for them on the sewer side. Really, probably not much discussion on that one.
We're getting so used to it.
Mhm.
Is there a motion on this one?
I move to make a one-time utility credit on the property at 1306 8th Avenue or whatever.
The
For
swamp.
water softener.
For whatever.
For the swamp. Come on, put the swamp in
Whatever the
there.
reason is this
Swamp.
time.
Is there a second to this?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Discuss for approval the appointment of Morgan Mitchell to the Belle Plaine Community Library Board of Trustees, complete Angel Breck's term of office. This one's simple.
I move to approve Morgan Mitchell to the library board to complete Angel Breck's term.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Catch up. Discuss for approval the renewal of a Class C liquor license commercial with Sunday sales and outdoor service for Grand Central Station, Inc. at 803 12th Street, Belle Plaine, Iowa. I've heard of no problems with their liquor license. So, that being said, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Class C and Sunday sales liquor license for Grand Central Station at 803 12th Street, Belle Plaine.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 5-0. Discuss for approval of film permit for Warm Spring Production to film in Belle Plaine in mid-April, including the use of a drone. I talked with Zach Lane today. This is filming for the Discover Channel. They're doing a documentary on his farm, and then they later on want to do a documentary as he rehabilitates the depot. And so that's who this Warm Springs production is. And in conjunction with that, and now that I know who they are and who they're dealing with, makes it a little more clear.
Do we have a film from that?
My son-in-law filmed here a couple summers ago. I just notified the police department because it involved a drone.
It was cool.
So I never even knew there could possibly be a permit. I just notified.
Well, there is now.
This is the people on
So next time he comes.
As soon as they give me a
This
rubber
is
stamp,
a couple on
permit,
related to
hang it on there.
Yeah,
It's their channel.
I would guess we may need to pull Gapster in the loop too, just from a burial standpoint.
Because I think if you fly a drone, you have to have
You're supposed to notify,
FAA.
yeah, you have to have
FA.
This is a
FAA
certified
license.
drone pilot, so I assume that they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And when we send them back the email, we will give them Gapster's name as our airport manager and his number to call him. And
Certain people might try to shoot at it, so I'm just saying.
Is
we
this,
should get people.
you want me to email these folks?
yeah, did you get this original? I don't remember who got
and I
this
came
original.
to Ashley and
Okay. Send a copy to him so he can reply back to it.
she may have.
Wow.
I haven't seen it.
Why did they approve this?
I was aware of it. I just didn't see the request.
You want it forwarded to you?
Yes, please.
I'll motion for approval.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
With making sure you include Gapster's name and number on it, and they're there to contact him as our airport manager. And if we can get on the Discover Channel with actual filming at Belle Plaine, it sure beats when the river bottom's out of control, or we got a train tipped over sideways. Any discussion on this? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 5-0. And that takes us through the tough stuff. All right, Steve, bring them up to.
I'm glad it's still working.
I was just saying, if there's actually anybody watching, there's 11 people on.
Probably pretty good to get ready to go to bed and watch the city council. Get ready to sleep.
Okay. I have heard back from the DNR. We have our permit in the process. We had to change a couple things on the permit. I don't know how in depth everybody wants me to get on it. It's basically how we run the wells and what sequence we run them in. And also, it was on our permit that we were still to be applying fluoride into our water. And I had previously discontinued that, but somewhere along the way, they had added fluoride to the water again. We're taking that back out of the permit so we don't have to and we don't have to put fluoride in the water. We don't have to test for it. So, that went pretty smoothly. I submitted the sanitary survey responses to the Manchester office with addressing anything that they may have had questions about. And that went very well. We will have some, I kind of recommended that we do some additional testing here and there just for quality control stuff. They were on board with that. Talked about some of the other things that we want to do to have a better operation, and they were in agreement with those things. So I then have been working with Lori Sharp, who is going to be in charge of the things that we have going on in the projects and the viability assessment. That is not going to run through the Manchester office. That's going to run through the Des Moines office. That's going to hit Lori Sharp's desk first. And then it's going to go to probably some DNR engineers to look over. And when I talked to her, we had a lot of things to discuss. We always have a good conversation. She had recommended that Steve Marsh come out here. He's with the Iowa Association of Municipal Utilities. He's a water expert. And I met with him and we had a really nice meeting. We went over some of the things that we have in the hopper, and with our water study that is wrapping up. I added a couple more things for options. So Heidi had to go look, Chris had to get her numbers, and then Heidi had to crunch numbers again. She presented it back to me today with the capital improvement projects. She didn't break it out the way that I wanted to. She just kind of included everything that I said that we need. And obviously it's going to have to be over time projects, not just right now. So we'll have, the options of drilling wells, buying and installing some kind of treatment facility, potentially coating the inside of the water tower, which needs done. Any of the various things, potentially upgrading our water meters, because our water meters are older, and I think that could contribute some to our, we would be able to track our usage and consumption more accurately. So those are just different options at the council. So the council is going to get presented a vast array of things, and then we'll just have to go through it and see what are the things we want to do this year, what are the things we want to do next year, what are the things we want to do 3, 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And that will help me wrap up all of that viability assessment. And my new deadline for that is at the end of this month. And I will be reviewing that with, I had Steve Marsh reviewed that with me, and then I took him around to all of our facilities and just showed him the town. We had our preliminary meeting. Then, when we get a little farther along, he's going to come back and help us look over our rate structures and things like that. I appreciate you guys reviewing the water department charges. That was a really good move. Those were things that we used to do a lot more of, and that will look very good in our viability assessment, but that we're tracking those things. Jay Hamilton started this week, and I've had a few projects for those guys to work together to start inventorying all of our water utility assets, like tools and supplies, parts, because we don't have a good handle on what we have. And so I really said that's important for us to know. I want to know what our inventory is. I want to know what we've got. I want it to be in a well-lit place that it's easy to find, and it's got the name of what it is right on there, so you can send anybody down and say, go grab a 4517 or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whatever we determine the nomenclature is going to be. So there's just a lot of cleanup activities going on. Does anybody have any questions about the DNR stuff before I move on to another? So I think that I've, like Mayor Fish said, I've really been following this closely and working with the DNR, and I'm very happy that I have a good relationship with them and that we play well together, and they take the time to listen to what I have to say and, you know, what our concerns are. And, none of us here asked to inherit 100 and some year old water system, with our oldest well being over 100 years old. But I said, this mayor and council and administration is going to be we're going to be the folks over time to turn it around. And they like that, initiative. So they're excited to work with us. And they've done nothing but throw resources at me on, as I'm going along, navigating what our long-term plans need to be. We had applied for a grant for upper story living for the depot for $300,000, and the state had I believe $20 million from the federal government, and they had 93 or 94 people apply for that for a total of like $33 million in asks. So bright and early this morning, Nick Sorensen called me and said, I just submitted whatever I could with what I had. We didn't have architectural drawings. We didn't have mock-ups. We didn't have a lot of stuff. And I put that right into my narrative, like, this is in the works. So he called me up and he said, you have a very strong application. He's like, this is very good. And you're my first call this morning. He said, where are you guys at with your architectural stuff? And I said, that was not my responsibility to get after, but I'll make a few calls. And I had someone from Snyder and Associates walk through that one time when, engineers come and knock on my door and they, asked what we were up to and, sales type things, inquiries. And I was like, hey, let's go look down at the depot, see what you got in mind. And so I took her down to the depot and looked around. She took some pictures, and then that was that. So after Nick called me, I called Annie back and said, are you still interested in doing some mock-ups for it? I checked with the owner. They had not had anything back from the architect. Nick said if I could get something in by the middle of next week, we're still in the running for the grant. So I got a hold of Annie and said, can you just get me something out here, some renderings and some floor plans, and how much is it going to be? And the owner agreed to pay that. And I sent her some information. I sent her the Matterport scan of the building, three-dimensional modeling, and some of the parameters. So she's going to be working on that to get that done so we can submit that as a supplement to our grant application. So it was really nice that he called and said, hey, you got a good thing here, but you're going to get a 0 on the part that says you have a map. They just want to see a picture of it. And I wasn't able to provide that. So he's given us a chance. And there are other people that are in that boat too. It's not just us. So it's still very competitive. It's not guaranteed, but $300,000 will go a long way in that building. I don't have anything else to report on at this time.
And he didn't mention, but every other Friday afternoon, they're gonna have team meetings with our entire staff.
I could elaborate on that if you like.
Well, they just need to know, let's get through the first one, but we have some educating we have to do with our working staff, and some of them would be prepping for greater water certification, and some of them will be as much as safety on how we're gonna dig water mains. So that starts on Friday, and I'll be interested to see how that goes. I'm sure in your mind you all have thoughts on an issue that you want answers to that you're not going to get answers to tonight, and here's why. And this is notes from our labor lawyer, and you will get an answer from your city administrator concerning one of our employees in sometime by the next meeting or the meeting after that. These were items that we had to take into consideration in dealing with this whole situation. So that's why really can't go into closed session based on, I know what's on some of your minds, but it's a lot more than, it's not as easy as it just seemed like it was. So Wilford Stone is the one who does negotiations for us, and he's the one we've been relying on. And the state of Iowa's put us in a difficult situation with what they've done with the police having total labor union and contract negotiations, and public workers being only allowed to negotiate salaries. And we're not exactly sure where we're at on all that. We're dealing with him right now in terms of writing up our employee handbook for next year. So if you have any individual questions, you can direct those to Steve on your own, or direct them to me individually. I think that material that we've been working with the last couple of weeks explains where we're at. Are there any other questions for the city administrator?
Yeah, I have a couple of things from, actually, this would be old business, just kind of a catch up. How are we coming on the debris from that home that was knocked down on 11th? That debris pile is still there. Have we heard any more from the
She
owner?
called me earlier in the week, and I asked her to email the mayor and I what her plan was, because I said, this isn't something that we can just do over the phone. And she said that she wasn't gonna have time to email it until she had time to email it. So I don't know what her computer situation is. 16th.
15th.
11th
Avenue and 15th.
Yeah.
15th, yeah.
15.
She was waiting to get a quote. the last time.
Yes, I had provided her with multiple contractors whom she said that she contacted, and she's waiting for quotes to come back. And again, so I asked her to email that to the mayor and I, so that we had a record of that correspondence.
Okay, and the old church lot, is there any movement on selling that, or what's the plan for that?
That is up to the council how we want to proceed with that. If we want to do a sealed bid, and then Jennifer could explain it better than I could. They would submit sealed bids and then come in, and then there would be an auction for it, correct? For the highest bidder for that piece of land. And I know there's three local stakeholders that are interested in that neighborhood.
And that's probably what we should do.
I don't know that it's big enough for us to try to fit some kind of housing on, because it's such a tight lot.
And what's the status of with the Herring property? Where are we with that?
I emailed Dr. Gibb and tried to pin her down. I said, so do we need to do the decertification, or however you want to term it, or can we just proceed with self-funding this thing? And she said, most of the time SHPO doesn't care if you tear down your own building with your own money. And I was like, well, I want a concrete answer on whether or not we're going to have any kind of penalties or repercussions after, you know, if we're able to do these activities. I don't want any trouble down the road. I want assurances, and what can I do to get that? And she's like, all I can tell you is most of the time they don't cause any problems. So
Yeah, because like Sanka is on the National Historic Registry, and that, or historic landmark, that you can't do. But a historic registry, if you own it and you decide, I mean, you really have the right to do what you want with your building. And
The difference
everything I've
being,
read,
you can't get a grant to
no,
tear it down.
that's right.
no,
So do we want to try and figure in our budget where to come up with 160,000? I mean, that's always been the problem with them, was not so much we didn't know what we wanted. We just wanted help paying for it. We were lucky on the Iowa Hotel, just happened to have a capital account that had that money in it.
yeah.
I was really rooting for the draft from Joyce, and I thought she was going to come through with it.
Not done yet.
And I had one other thing too, just to let you know that I did have a resident comment about the potholes in the streets. Anxious for us to get those filled up.
Yeah, I talked with Al about that on Monday.
I just said I would
Thank you.
relay that. Thank you.
You bet. I just thought of something. We got approved for a $5,000 tree grant through Trees Forever for planting more trees this fall.
Aligned energy and trees for everyone.
Correct. Yeah.
Anything else for him?
I have a question to piggyback off of Judy. So you're trying to pin her down whether or not we have to do this decertification. And she says, we don't care if you want to tear it down with your own money, but what if we want to apply for grants?
Then we have to delist it. But I couldn't even get a straight answer on, you know, and no offense to her, I don't know what she can say and can't say, but I still didn't get an answer on, you know, what if any repercussions are there if we tear it down with our own funding and it's listed.
I don't know that there really is any.
There is. I mean, I've read a bunch of things, and there
You know,
isn't. But like you said, you can't get the Brown grant.
Right, and the
Right.
only thing I've read about it is that if you had received any money, state or federal, that went into that building, we haven't received any
No.
money.
I received a grant for asbestos testing from the DNR. That's it.
But, you know, I don't know if Christine received any money,
She did.
and whether or not that transfers to us would be our only question now that we own it.
Well, she can't.
There's a really dark story in that one. So that's hopefully doesn't get dug up, because that'll.
I know, but that's my question. I guess that would be the other question I would ask her is, if we move forward with decertification, you know, are we going to have to repay a grant that was given to an entity, not us?
I think you and I are supposed to make a road trip down to Palmer, but that hasn't happened.
Yeah. Let's let him in part of some of these things, folks. I've told him he's got to focus on the DNR.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, that's critical.
I can't have him out worried about where the next road sign, grain bin road sign's going up at, or any of that stuff, until I know that report with the DNR is done and final.
Right.
And then we get the water report, folks, and we can start to make plans on what we're gonna do well-wise. Anything else for him? Well, why don't you guys work out a trip to Des Moines, but leave him alone the rest of this. I'm gonna make these quick on mine. Emergency management, that was a budget meeting in Benton, and we will be getting a letter on sirens. They've finally now concluded that those who have sirens within their community from the Palo plant, who's keeping those, and then they'll let us know what the cost is if we want another siren for the west side of town. So those haven't gone away. They project now by, I think, September 1, they'll be down to every nuclear rod will be put in concrete in a storage shed with 5 guards out there for the rest of its life until the feds tell them when they can ship it to Utah, Nevada, or wherever that big hole in the ground is they've got that they're not using. So I will be bringing that siren proposal back to you. Iowa County and Benton County Development met here at a luncheon meeting, and they're just kind of shuffling their feet, trying to find somebody to become the assistant development director for our combined group. They're kind of going to give it a rest and then start a big advertising push come May 1st. Benton Development was just a normal Benton Development group meeting. A lot of positive things in Benton County. One of the negative ones, Urbana lost out on a, I don't know, $4.1 million project. It was down to them in 2 places in Cedar Rapids, and lo and behold, the last meeting was in Cedar Rapids, and then all of a sudden in the middle of the meeting in came the Cedar Rapids mayor, the Cedar Rapids city administrator, and I forget how many other big executive committee people, and a whole bunch of Benton County got screwed out of being able to present the same package that Urbana. We actually had, I think, the proof that we encompass a bigger employment area than Cedar Rapids. Because if you put that plant in Urbana, you also draw in Waterloo, Cedar Falls, which they do not. But we also draw in Cedar Rapids. So that was, I know Kate was really disappointed in that because she had worked really hard, and even had the company that first looked at their property in Urbana came out there secretly on their own to look at it a second time with the guys that they had doing something else in Des Moines. So that was, I know she was bummed out about it, but that's what sells me further why Iowa County and Benton County have to work together. Because Lynn County, that corridor group is going to kick us in the shins every chance they get. EasyCog, normal EasyCog meeting, except we did approve a company, gave a loan to a company that is now going to start making pallets instead of making them out of wood. They're going to make them out of plastic, so they can be reused.
You also have to ship them internationally.
So that was kind of cool. Landfill meeting, I wasn't there, so Mary, if you want to say anything about what went on at the landfill meeting.
You told me it was gonna last 20 minutes and it lasted about an hour and a half.
No, it wasn't an hour and a half. It was longer than normal.
Yeah. Really some good discussions on planning for how they do some of the construction inside the landfill and couple it with the county road, and also about assets. I think that was your
Yeah, we talked,
project.
we approved, buying the haul truck. They're going to be doing a paving project this spring/summer to basically pave from the road over the scale. Moving forward with the design plans for a convenience center so that you don't have to drive into selling, or if you're just bringing into your truck or your vehicle. Anybody that's a hauler or they have construction material or bringing a trailer has to have to go under the cell, but otherwise, general public is what we bump into some dumpsters really right across from the scale.
That's good.
And then we're kind of revamping how we're handling our capital accounts and trying to dial in a little bit further on getting into a rotation for replacing our machinery.
Which before the commission took over, the only thing they did with equipment was just put county junk vehicles out there. The landfill we used and
We got
stuff,
all the hand-me-downs from the county and they're in rough shape.
which meant that when we used them for a month, then you just shoved them off into a cell and buried them because they were junk to start with. UNI won, they beat University of Missouri, Kansas City by 25 points. That's why I wasn't at Landfill. I was up supporting my alma mater. I don't remember where we got set in the second round, but I didn't go and we didn't win. And that's all I've got for questions there. As you can see, a ton of paperwork went into this meeting to get all this stuff ready. I've got no correspondence for you other than that material I handed out. Old business, none. Resident comments?
I just wanted to piggyback off of what Judy was talking about with the potholes. Just wondering if they are going to look at the 4th Avenue intersection that we talked about last summer. It has rebar sticking out of it. And it's now cracked and broken up about that far wide all the way across the cement street.
Is that why there's a little bit of a surprise when you come up to the stop sign?
Yes. So people are trying to avoid it. So they're coming around the corner, wide one way and,
Other need for address.
903 4th Avenue. Thank you.
I got it down.
Awesome. Thank you.
Because I think they're working on that plan because we are going to do seal coating much earlier this year. Long story, we didn't seal coat issues last year, so we're doing double. But biggest problem with city streets is we don't get enough gas tax money to do as much as we'd love to do.
I have a signage issue with DOT. I don't know who we need to talk to, but where they got the road there, we really need the road closed there at 7th Avenue. It really needs to say Highway 21 closed because.
Looks like 9th or 8th, 7th
Avenue
Avenue
is
is
the one
8
that's
miles
closed.
north.
Yeah, and not 21.
Yeah, I
So it
noticed
really
that.
needs to say like
That's really
Highway
bad.
21 on it. And the other thing is when you go out past Pierce's, there used to be a sign that said low clearance right there, either before or after you turn the corner so the semis could see it. That sign has disappeared in the last 6 to 8 months. And now we're seeing semis that are like heading down towards the railroad bridge and then trying to turn around on our road. And I figure if we're making a phone call about signing here, they need to re-sign that because we've already had enough people peel trailers open and get stuff.
So the state one-
Talked to them once, so I guess we're gonna have to talk.
So the 21 signs will be the state DOT and then the other ones will be probably the county. Well, I'll have to talk to Al about that.
Well, it could be now the state
It
problem
could be.
because
Because of the detour.
if they don't follow the detour correctly, if they head towards Lucerne, we know what mess that's gonna be.
Yes.
Maybe you should call them rather than drop that in house.
I'll call
I've
Chad.
seen 2 semis already that have turned to go south on 9th Avenue and seen our sign and went, oh crap, and then backed up. So,
Well, and I know the chief, didn't he talk to you about getting 235-mile-an-hour signs on?
There are a lot of things that I was kind of working on in tangent to some of these things. Like for instance, when Google or Apple Maps, when the state or the county or whomever, when they're working on roads and they don't update that with the people with the algorithm that tries to figure out the best route, there's a huge problem. So I got a hold of the DOT and I was like, how do I keep these people off of these streets? And they're like, well, you can't say that a road's closed. And I was like, what about embargoed? And they're, so we're trying to figure that out.
Well,
Because,
let's start with the signs we need.
yeah, because they have not updated the GPS correctly.
But I mean, the only thing that you see when you come into town is if you're coming, the billboard they have that says Highway 21 closed at Highway 30. That's the only place that you see anything that tells you that Highway 21 and 30 is closed.
Yeah.
You know, and I haven't gone out of town that way, since they closed it to see what any signage they have out
There
there.
were just two road signs out there.
Yeah, that's
Did
it.
follow a semi out of town before I came back for the meeting. Where's this guy going? Because I thought he must be taking the Chelsea route. He kept going north. If I'd had time, I was going to follow him out. I wanted to see if he was going to go through.
I can almost guarantee he's taking a gravel.
Around where Nathan Grider used to live, and then up and around past Terry Ulch's. That's,
If you're driving a semi out of gravel roads,
Right
you're
now.
not loading grain or
Right.
hauling hogs or whatever. You're asking for
Yes,
trouble.
Nathan.
so when you go up to, don't want to give a false detour. So if you go to Irving and go over 2 miles, I think, and then you jump on that road, and then you go a mile north, and then you can go past where Terry used to live.
Trouble is he came from that direction.
Yeah, I mean, the signage is
Weird.
terrible when it comes to semis, and we know how much truck traffic comes up in 121, so, I mean.
We will get on the streets, promise. But I wish we had $100,000 in road tax money.
One of the things that happened, Heather, is with the population dropping, the road use tax is based off of the per capita, some of that stuff. So we got less money to play with. There's a number of things. If you want to shoot
Not
in,
specific for roads or anything like that.
Some communities.
there wouldn't be enough to do.
Right.
Some of it goes to the ambulance fund, some of it goes to fireworks.
I mean, it's a couple $1,000 here, a couple $1,000
Fire
there.
department,
Library.
library.
Yeah.
Debt service.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I just love watching the news and watching Iowa City and Cedar Rapids fight over that American Recovery Act, millions of dollars. Jesus. And they've got, seems like zillions of dollars. I don't have a real need to go into closed session unless you guys think we need to go into closed session. I'm gonna drop the closed session. We'll throw a motion to go into closed session, a motion to come out. We have no motion there. Any questions from you? How did our TV venture go here? Are we still on?
Yeah, we were up to like 18 or 20. Now we're down to 12.
Well, folks, we're gonna have a commercial message here shortly. Just kidding.
The audio I think is okay, but hopefully it'll be better next time. I couldn't get the microphone to connect for some reason this time. I ran several tests, but
We'll get better with each one.
and then the other thing is, if anybody's still listening, the link to get to the YouTube channel is just a randomized bunch of letters and numbers. If we get up to 100 followers, then I can turn that into YouTube/Belle Iowa, so that people can just look for Belle Iowa and it goes straight there. But until we have some following, it's just rookies.
But if you go into YouTube and you search City of Belle Plaine, it pops right up.
Okay, good.
That's what I did, and it was the very top one.
This thing sucked my whole battery down in like 20 minutes. I could not believe it.
Okay, I need a motion for adjournment.
I motion for adjournment.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'm told that's a non-discussable item. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Who got it?
Well,
Judy.
Oh, okay.
You got it?
Garrett and Mitch.
I think he was just ahead of me by a
So
Say, you don't
we're
know.
done. Shut
I'm off
that
my
off.
game.